Hello, welcome to the Around the Ice podcast presented by Fantasy and Frames. I'm your host, Bryan Toast Clark. I'm filling in for Justin Taylor, who is in the penalty box tonight with a major for fighting a cold. And tonight I am joined by my co-host, Aaron Tometich, and a guest, my brother, Gale Clark, who you can actually find on the X at Gale Clark 40. So, hey, fellas, thanks for joining us tonight as we take you and the listeners around the ice of the NHL betting, fantasy hockey, and give you the advice to help you be successful in your weekly matchups. So let's go ahead and do some around the ice. Hey guys, again, thanks for joining me tonight to we're going to have a special edition of Around the Ice here on Fantasy and Frames as we talk about the NHL's break. Instead of doing an all-star game, they're doing the Four Nations face-off. So we're going to do a little bit of a different format than what the listeners are used to. We're going to have a little bit of fun with this. But before we go into the show, I actually want to tell all the listeners again to follow our hockey content produced by our hockey staff here at Fantasy and Frames. Please follow us on X at FIF Hockey. That is FIF Hockey, where you can find this show streaming each and every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Central Time, and where you can actually get all of your NHL content, NHL betting, and fantasy hockey questions answered. So you can watch that, you can rewatch it, and you can chat directly with us on the Fantasy and Frames YouTube channel whenever we go live. So to subscribe to this podcast, go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and subscribe to the Around the Ice podcast, which is a Fantasy and Frame show. So tonight, again, as I said, I have Aaron and I have my brother Gale. Guys, how you guys doing?
Good. I mean, what a week of hockey. Like you said, Toast, the Four Nations has replaced the kind of boring snooze fest of an NHL All-Star game, the skills competition that may or may not be one of the more embarrassing moments hockey's had over the last few years. Last year when Kucherov kind of slept through it. But yeah, Four Nations, I mean, what a home run by the NHL, especially now this time of year, kind of the slower, we're in the middle of winter, hopefully the last breaths of winter, but Super Bowl's over, so football's over. March Madness hasn't kicked off yet, so looking for stuff to watch, and I think the NHL really knocked it out of the park. They did they promoted this Four Nations, got the fans behind it, got some excitement behind it. But I'd say more than anything, or equal shout out to the players for buying in. At this point now, we've just got the one game left. The championship game as it's been it's been built for this U.S. Canada showdown. But I'd say more than anything, where are you going to grow the game? Where are you going to grow the NHL? Everybody in Canada is glued to the TV, especially Hockey Night in Canada. TSN, the Four Nations does need, I see that in the chat, the Four Nations does need to teach the NFL, MLB, and NBA how to do the All-Stars, right? But where do you need to grow? The growth of the game is here in the U.S. We have millions of viewers that can tune in, and that's where I'm hearing most of the people talk about it. People you might not necessarily have talked hockey or talking about what a game. And again, I mentioned the players buying in. I don't know, we'll talk to the game or we'll break down the game, at least the U.S. Canada game. But no, again, hats off. It's a really good format. The game means something to the players, means something to the countries. And I cannot wait till Thursday night. I already preemptively took off Friday, so it'll be a great game. I cannot wait for it. So I'm glad to see this format, and couldn't agree more with the chat that let's set the standard. I think the NHL is showing the rest of the major sports how to do it.
Yeah, and before we happen to go more into the Four Nations and really talk about specific, I want to talk about the format before we actually go into the tournament itself. Gail, I'm going to give you an opportunity here for the listeners to get to know you just a little bit. I'm not going to say, hey, tell me about yourself and this and that, because we really don't care. They really don't care. They don't care either. But what I do want to know, and what they may want to know, is what's your background with the game of hockey? What's your earliest memory of the game of hockey? You and I actually together, being hockey fans together, what can you actually tell your listeners, good, bad, funny, not funny, about the game of hockey, what you've actually enjoyed?
Sure. Well, first off, JT, get better, buddy. A lot of sickness out there. I'll try to hold the fort down here in this third window for a little bit. I'm thinking back to literally early 90s Blackhawks hockey and watching on the old, was it Sports Vision, where you flip channels and you find them on, back before the blackouts, and you can't watch anything around here that's Blackhawks or Blues now. But that's really my first memory, is remembering those teams in the early 90s, made it to the NHL final, were swept by the Penguins. I remember that. And then, this isn't really part of the actual game on the ice, but Bryan and I played a ton of Sega 94 NHL. And we dominated that thing. And you started to learn who was who from the video game. And that was, we were young kids, late teens, early 20s. That was great. I still remember that. There's a guy on X that actually posts highlights from 94 Sega hockey. He just replays games and then posts highlights. That's really my first thoughts of going back to NHL. But to get to your point, Aaron, you said that this is drawing in fans that maybe aren't usually hockey watchers, and NHL needs to grow the game and grow the fan base. I represent that fan. Huge background in baseball, football, basketball. That was the only thing I watched growing up, with some boxing thrown in. On occasion, we'd watch hockey if the Blackhawks were in some kind of a big game. But I am that fan. And this Four Nations format, like you said, it's drawing people in. I'm talking to buddies about this that know nothing about hockey whatsoever. I'm actually in text threads where I'm like, hey, you guys need to tune in and watch this. That's what the NHL really needs to do. And I think they've got their foot in the door here. They need to get people like me, people that have been invested in baseball and football my whole life. And that's where I've been watching the Cubs, the Bears, Illinois basketball. They're down 6 at the half, by the way. I'm checking my phone. But if you could get literally people like me to invest in watching hockey, that's where you're going to make your biggest inroads, I think, because we love sports, we love competition, and hockey's exciting. You only got to watch a few games and then start to learn who's who before you start getting pulled into it. And that's really where I'm at right now. I'll throw in the idea of sports betting here as well. Everybody has an app on their phone now that's a sports watcher or is a competitive person. I want to know who's on the fourth line for Calgary at the 9 p.m. game now, just because I might hit a prop. That's been huge for sports. I'm not necessarily a big, gigantic fan of that. I know that there's some downside to all of that as well. But I think with that, this Four Nations format, you're going to start pulling people like me into it. And I'll pull a couple more people with me, and you'll grow from there. I think that's where they could head with this Four Nations idea, because it's electric. Did anybody even know the NBA had their thing this weekend with all the talk of Canada and the United States? Who cares? What they're doing is a joke over in those other leagues. And the NHL, like you said, Aaron, they're brawling. It means so much to them. They're fighting, and there's no letting up. It's total game on. Or these other sports leagues, you got players that look like they'd rather be anywhere else on the planet than in some of their own all-star games, and that's sad. I think the NHL's done great here.
Yeah, and Gail, well said. And before we happen to go on here, I want you to also maybe tell the listeners specifically. I will say, back at NHL 94, we were 81-0 in our league going into the last game of the season. Why don't you just go ahead and walk the listeners through what happened in game number 82?
You don't really want me to get into this.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll tell the quick of the story. There's the quick of the story, the honest story. I'm in Champaign at some bars with buddies. I come home, and he's playing the final game by himself in a bedroom that we shared. And I'm looking at the screen. And I'm like, You're down 6-2 in the third. We were 81-0. Needless to say, I picked up a controller and jumped in, and then we were playing two guys against the computer. At one point, I looked over at this guy, and he was asleep on the floor. He'd been with some buddies also. We lost. We were 81-1, and then we swept the playoffs. We swept every series and won the cup. I think 17 straight more. It's not a fond memory of my childhood and upbringing that this fool cost us the perfection he did.
Yeah, well, you know what? And it's a true story. I mean, he looks over, it's like, why aren't you moving your guy? I'm over there passed out.
He was passed out.
You know? So, I mean, perfect season. That's when you started just to be able to kind of make your own guy, make your own player, you know, so we'd actually make ourselves we wouldn't make ourselves superstars. We were like third and fourth line checkers, you know, and we did check lines and stuff like that where I was weighing hellacious hits and everything else. But Gail, you mentioned it perfect. Aaron, you mentioned it perfect. And I know Jamie actually in the chat actually mentioned it perfect as well. Is the NHL actually does have something right here. And what the NBA does, and to me, that's a joke of a league. I'm sorry. It's the way LeBron actually conducted himself this weekend by actually not playing, actually not really waiting to get in uniform when it's actually taking team pictures and stuff. I mean, I'll tell you guys a story before we actually move on. Is Brandon Hagel tells a story here for Team Canada. The night before the first game, he said he was actually laying in his room, looking up at the ceiling and wondering that, and a quote, I hope this isn't a playoff format, or I'm sorry, a all-star format. Because if it is, I'm not really sure what to do with myself because I'm ready to actually run through a wall. And I'm going to put my head through a wall for my flag, he said. That's what you need. And that's what I always love hockey. And I've said it time and time again. The sport of hockey, and I think I told Gail as he's kind of getting back into it and actually got a long history with hockey that's been away from it for a while. No team plays a harder team sport than hockey. No players line 1 through 4. All 23 guys on the roster are actually working their balls off every single shift, actually getting it done. Penalties, there's no flags for like, oh my gosh, you breathed on the quarterback, or the NBA where they're taking 5 steps and they don't call it a travel because it's quote unquote a Euro step. There's none of that. You actually have hard-nosed, tough play from whistle to whistle. You guys got in their face, and again, working up a sweat. And at the end, they have to play hard. They got to play together to actually win that game. And you very, very rarely see players taking off a night, ever. And if they're taking off, they're hurt. It's kind of like the old Jordan rules, right? Like they say, Jordan never took off a game, the sick game, this and that. Like the way the NBA used to be back in the 90s and basically like with the bad boys and like just kicking the crap out of one another. That's the NHL now all of the time. And how do you not actually love that? It's a dying thing. This is a bottle this up. I hope the NHL never changes. I don't think that they will. I think this is their game. But I don't want to give too much of it away because we have tons of Four Nations stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about some of that, right? We're going to talk about what makes the game great because we saw a lot of fireworks during this deal. So, so let's go ahead and talk about, leading up into Four Nations here. And honestly, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and go maybe team by team here and talk about each one of these. But before we do, let's talk about the format in general. So the Four Nations tournament, you actually have United States, you have Canada, you have Finland, and we have Sweden. Only those 4. I wish Russia was in there, right? We all kind of wish Russia was in there. We got some political reasons for whatever. I don't agree with that. Doesn't make a difference, whatever, but it would be awesome. We all agree that it would have been awesome if Russia was actually in there. All right. Could you imagine the lines, man? It would be like all the Columbus Blue Jacket lines, right? Because those guys, I mean, pretty much all Russian. But you get, for a regulation win, you get 3 points. For a overtime win, you get 2. An overtime loss, you get 1. And for a regulation loss, you get 0. You only have 3 games. It's a round robin for 4 teams. So everybody's playing 3 games. And then at the end, whoever has the most points is playing in the championship game. And we actually have that championship game coming Thursday. And I'm with you, Aaron. Aaron, come on over. Stay all night if you'd like to. I'm considering, taking on Friday as well. I'm definitely watching the game. There's no doubt about that. But they'll play for the championship. But right now, we knew it was actually going to be USA Canada, or we actually hoped it would be. It was, and that's really we all expected that. But that's the format, and it was over like by a week and a half period here. The NHL gets a long break. They don't have to go through the All-Star Bowl crap. What you actually said with Kucherov, it's like, man, that skills competition last year, Kucherov, I mean, it was a joke. He made it quite evident he did not want to be there. Like, I don't want to be here. This is completely stupid. This half-assing the puck around the ice, not even really trying. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I remember, from watching that. So that is a little bit of the background on the Four Nations. But I'm going to go ahead and start with the first team here. I want you guys to go ahead and jump in. And again, I'm just going to tell you what I saw from each team, and maybe also some hot and cold players from the tournament. Okay. And it will eventually kind of end up with the USA Canada Championship on Thursday. We'll talk about maybe some bets we like, and also maybe some predictions for the game. So let's go ahead and start with Finland. Finland, as again, was a team where it was evident from the very beginning that defense was going to be an issue for Finland. All right. They had so many injuries on the blue line there. They lost Miro Heiskanen. Jani Hakanpää was actually out as well. Rasmus Ristolainen. I mean, so they actually had to come out with guys like Esa Lindell, who actually scored a goal. Okay. Yeah. Oi Mata, the ex-Blackhawk, and Henry Jokiharju, the ex-Blackhawk as well. Ooh, I'm not saying that like Mata's not a nice player. He's a slow player, right? So that was evident and we'll talk about team speed here in a bit. Okay. But they also had a guy with Nico Mikkola and Jussi Välimäki as well from the Utah Hockey Club, who we actually pissed off as not the Yeti. But from top to bottom, Finland really was outmatched. This entire team looked kind of out of sorts as well. The offense really wasn't much better. They were actually forced to play really a game between the blue lines. They had to slow the game down, they knew, versus the U.S. versus Canada and Sweden. They did not match up well with these countries. Heck, they only had 23 shots on goal as a team, and they actually gave up a tournament high 84 shots on goal as well. So they were really much out of place. Is anything you guys want to add regarding Finland and kind of what you saw from them? I really saw a team that really was outmatched from the very beginning.
Yeah, I agree with you on every point. They had a trouble, and I don't know the stats, like how much time the puck was in their defensive zone, but they had a good forward core. But they were going to have to go all offense. If they had a chance, they were going to win the game 8-7, or 8-6, or they were just going to have to dump so many goals in and stay ahead, because, like you said, due to injury, or just again, Finland. We're talking of. I think we were talking about this going into the Four Nations. I'm going to be real bad at this, but I thought it was like 6 or 8 million population, of 6 or 8 million versus like I think we were talking about Capo Caco coming over, like, his home country is 6 to 7 million, where the population of New York is like 15 million or whatever. So anyway, for what they had or what they have, that they were a little thin to begin with, so they had to have everybody in perfect health. But I think with Finland, yeah, it was only going to work one way, and it was if they snapped the puck around. With the defense that the three other teams had, there was no chance of that. They were smothered. They didn't have what they needed in terms of the, just puck possession. They just really didn't have a chance. So I agree with you on every point.
I can add in.
Go ahead, Gail.
I was going to say, I can add in 2 things for Finland. Number 1, Lindell scored the goal, and I had Lundell to score a goal. So that really pissed me off for a moment there. I got excited.
I hit, yeah.
So, from the casual fan perspective of that. And the other thing that I'll remember, you guys are saying they were outmatched. Even a casual hockey fan like me knows that. Them scoring those 3 goals late against Canada embodies the spirit of this whole thing. 4-0. They didn't quit. They dug in. They dug deep. And anybody who had Canada puck line shit themselves there for a couple moments. That's the Finland highlight, I think, to me.
Yeah, Gail, and absolutely. I mean, I know Granlund got hot for them, right? Hit a couple goals there within a 30-second span. We got a question here or a comment here. We'll get to that here in a second. But there was one player, honestly, particularly, I was a little disappointed, and I was disappointed in Mikko Rantanen. To me, Mikko Rantanen kind of looked out of place the entire tournament. He actually did score that one-time goal. It was funny when he actually scored it from the right circle. It was almost a whiff of a goal, and it happened to go by Bennington, and I think that's why it actually scored, because he barely got anything on it and barely touched a puck. It was almost like a change-up, and it just kind of really baffled Bennington, and he actually got the goal, the puck in the back of the net. So, but Rantanen, since he's been traded from Colorado to Carolina, he's got 1 goal, 1 assist, 6 games. He does have 21 shots on goal in that span, all right? So I am optimistic, but he's playing with a guy like Sebastian Aho on line 1, but he's no Nathan McKinnon, okay? So, Aaron, I'm going to ask you, if you're a GM looking at a huge piece in the free agent offseason this year, I mean, I know you're going to want to target Rantanen, but are you going to want to target Rantanen at that $12 million tag he's going to get at 8 years? I mean, based on what you've seen in Carolina. Now, I know Carolina, they like to actually play 4 lines, right? Even, and actually really spread out the time on ice. So it's a lot different than Colorado. But let's say you're the Blackhawks. We're going to have tons of cap room. You're really going to want to get a superstar in there to actually partner with Bedard. You're going to want Rantanen, okay? But does this cause you any pause based on his time in Carolina and also what you actually saw from him in the Four Nations?
Well, I mean, for the contenders, I take a pass. So if I'm a contender, with the exception of Vegas, the reason why I say that, and I don't know what the cap situation is in Vegas. I think they're always the cap circumcisers, where they put somebody on the IR, normally Mark Stone, then he miraculously comes back and they don't have to put his, they're not responsible for his salary. So say what you will, but if I'm a top tier team, so I'm say top 10 in the NHL at cup chances, no, I take a pass. I take a hard pass because of every point you just made. He was skating with Nathan McKinnon. If I'm the Hawks, yes, then it's the reverse of everything, because I got a line mate. It's all about his line mate. Somebody that's going to get the attention, maybe take the spotlight. Bedard's that guy. He's already got the spotlight. You keep him at center. You're not. I think at this point he'll stay at center. But you throw Rantanen on the wing. He's got size. He's got speed. The only reason why I threw out Vegas, because Vegas is a contender right now, is Jack Eichel. Jack Eichel's an extremely talented center, pass first guy. Mikko's a shoot first guy. That should work out. Eichel takes the heat. Mikko can kind of come in and do his thing. So if I'm looking for like a guy to lead the team and be my number one, and I don't have a line mate with him, no, I'm taking a pass on him. But if I've already got at least an equal to him, and I'm not saying Bedard is, I mean, obviously Rantanen's got the resume, but I'd look real hard at, like, I'd want that 1-2 punch like Edmonton, like McDavid, Draisaitl, some dynamic where I've got somebody that can maybe grab some of that. Because to your point with Carolina, and they play man-on-man defense, which nobody else plays. I mean, there's just, it's a different structure. Like, I can't imagine Rantanen going to even like Detroit. I mean, no. Who's gonna be like, Larkin is a great, one of the best two-way forwards, but he's not going to have a guy that, Patty Kane's on his, he's going out to pasture soon. So whatever, you can say whatever you want, but you just need a standout center or talent to couple with them. The time away from McKinnon is pretty small, but just what we've seen and the tendencies we've seen, that's how I see it. So, yeah, if I'm a contender, no, I pass. Or if I can make the cap room, I'm not going to break my back to make the cap room to send him $12 million and maybe get rid of a guy that's produced, or maybe another guy out there. But if I'm a bottom feeder, I don't know, maybe the Sharks would be interesting too. I don't know what their cap situation is either, but throw him on the line with Mac, with Celebrini, see what happens. But yeah, he's just going to need he's not a standalone, do-it-yourself kind of guy. He's a good complement to that number one guy.
Yeah, and we got a comment here from Jamie that said, "Do you think they'll add more nations in the future, like Russia and Germany or Switzerland?" Yeah, I hope so. And honestly, like I said, the Russian team would be amazing. There was a great goaltending that was actually let out of this tournament. Bobrovsky, just coming Vasilevsky there, and I said all of Ovechkin, who's actually going out to the goal record this year. And the list goes on, especially with all the Blue Jacket players and Artemi Panarin. They would have been just as good as anybody in this. And I even think Germany, a team like Germany, could actually compete. I mean, so the first player that actually comes to your mind is Leon Draisaitl, right? German. Mort Seider. Our boy, Tim Stützle. All right, for Ottawa. I mean, you got to love. And then an oncoming JJ Peterka. But then you got bottom feeders like Lucas Reichel for the Blackhawks and Nico Dahl as the goalie. And so Philip Grubauer. So, I mean, there's plenty of talent there where I think you could expand this. I think if you made this a 2-week tournament where they're actually playing maybe every other night instead of every single night, or actually had some every night of some action going on, you could easily expand this and actually go to 5 games on a round robin, right? For each team and not miss a beat. It'd be completely fine. So I like the idea. I think the NHL will actually do it. And they really got to look at this. I know this was you're going to have the Olympics next year, so you won't have an all-star game again next year, which is great. Again, we don't need all-star games. I mean, this is what I didn't really know what to expect coming in gambling and actually watching, where I'm like, holy crap, they got Dylan Larkin at a plus 800 to score a goal. That's the type of thing where you're just like, you're not used to. You're like, whoa, I got to jump on that action. But then realizing Dylan Larkin's only going to get about 14 minutes time on ice because you're just so front loaded, but you're just not used to it, man. You're not used to superstar players coming in and given that they're all like this and actually being on one team together. It just doesn't happen often. So it doesn't happen on any other teams or any other sports as well. So that's what makes hockey, again, pretty damn unique. So any of you guys got anything else to mention regarding Finland before we actually move on to Sweden?
Well, no more thoughts on Finland, but real quick while you say it, I think Russia's got the depth. They could definitely be a 5th team. You may need to get to a point where you combine maybe some of the former Eastern Bloc countries, Latvia. I hate to throw everybody in because I know there's some space between the countries, but Germany definitely would have a top line for sure. But where's the depth? Czech Republic. Again, another one, or Czechia now as they're known, but you may have to get a little creative, but if you expanded to 6, I think you're onto something. But really, and Gail, you touched on it earlier, money talks. So if you get the TV ratings up, which I think that's pretty evident that they did well, and we'll see what happens in the championship game. But you get that and all the money that they lose out on the sponsors, like for the All-Star games, because that's technically all it is just a bunch of selling advertisement time, whether it's at the host city or whatever it is. But you supplement that with TV money, tap into FanDuel, DraftKings, whatever your favorite sports betting app is, and then you're set, because the games do mean something. I can sprinkle a few bucks on a Dylan Larkin goal, and then there's your solution. Then you don't have to worry about it. And I think it was 2, again, it wasn't a chance thing that they do 4 nations right before Olympics, but everybody's already pumped and buzzing about the Olympics when it is nation. It is nation versus nation. And there is no, that we'll get everybody out there that's kind of in the pot. But no, I've liked Finland was there. They have the depth, even though it was, they were a little thin, got a little thin there. But as far as a standalone nation, hats off to them. They did the best they could. They weren't out there getting smoked 10-0. They threw it together, and they did make some of the those that took Canada made them a little nervous when they threw those 3 goals in the third period. But yeah, all in all, good.
All right, good deal, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about Sweden a little bit. I'll start off, and I'll kind of kick these off by saying, I tell you what, Sweden, along with Canada, super fast team. And that was evident. And that opening game versus Canada opened up the tournament. Gail, I texted you. And I think you remember me texting you this. I'm like, this is the fastest game I have ever seen on TV, ever. And wouldn't you know, Drew Doughty, the future Hall of Famer defenseman for the LA Kings, come out after the game and said, that was the fastest game I've ever played in. I mean, did you guys notice when you actually watched that game, every single pass was right on the freaking tape, right on the end of the stick. And the pace of the play was so ridiculous fast because you have two teams that aren't going to want to actually board one another. They're not a bunch of bruising teams who are just going to knock the crap out of one another. They literally want to go ahead and use every inch of the ice, skate up and down, go as fast as they possibly can, and exchange punches and actually shots on goal. And they did that pretty much the entire game. It was unbelievably quick. I know that Canada got out in a 2-0 lead in that opening game. It was a hell of a lot of energy there. They were in Montreal, right in Canada's backyard, of course. And but and the Swedes have a good team. They really do, man. And it was awesome the way they actually pushed overtime in that game after they went down 2-0. If there was one team that I could just actually say before this tournament that I would have actually bet on to say, let's go ahead and actually put them at the best odds and go ahead and win this thing, it would have been Sweden, because Sweden's got a really, really good roster, top to bottom. And man, I could not believe how quick they were.
I think at one point, one of the announcers said how fast McDavid had been clocked skating down the ice on that goal. 24. They had him over 24 miles per hour. I'm assuming that's not typical in hockey. But yeah, he was a blur. He really was. I enjoyed that game. I mean, that was the first game that I watched in the tournament, obviously, because it was game number 1. You kept thinking Canada's going to blow this team out, but in the back of my mind, you know that they've got Nylander over there, and they've got Lucas Raymond, and they've got Philip Forsberg and some guys. And then Sweden they stuck around for a while. They had chances in overtime.
Yeah.
They had some serious chances. The one other thing in my mind, I like the 10-minute overtime. I'd rather see 10 minutes of overtime all the time. And I know that you're going to have longer time on ice. You're going to have somebody get injured in the back end of one of those 10-minute overtimes if they normalize that. And maybe that's why they do the shootouts in the regular season games. But I really like the 10-minute overtimes. It's so much better watching guys 3-on-3 than to watch guys come out and do the shootout. Shootout can be exciting, but I love that 3-on-3 format. And the 10-minute overtime in that game, Marner scored in the back end of that, didn't he?
Yeah.
It was after the 5-minute mark. So if that was a regular season NHL game, it's going to a shootout. And the Four Nations, they did it right with the overtime too. They said, we're going to expand this. And we got to see that final action there by Mitch Marner in the OT. I thought that was excellent. Another great decision by the NHL.
Yeah, I'd really like to see them, Gail, actually move to that 10-minute overtime. I know John Tortorella actually come out, who's an assistant for the USA team, and basically said, let's just do away with the shootout altogether. Let's go ahead and go to 10-minute. I know that Nathan McKinnon may not actually like that, the fact that he's like, man, my legs were dead at 7 minutes. I'm done. I couldn't do much more. And I'm like, coming from McKinnon, that's a lot considering a guy who actually never puts anything bad in his body in his entire life.
Right.
He was the model of fitness and does some really extraordinary things to actually keep himself in top-notch shape. So when he's actually saying it, you may have to listen. But nevertheless, maybe they extend it to 7 minutes and 30 seconds or a little bit longer, or maybe just 10 minutes, right? Because I like the fact that in the overtime, it's kind of like a shootout that actually goes maybe 10 rounds. You're going to see some players that maybe not normally see some time. Again, dive into your roster. If you actually have a deep third and fourth line there with some guys that are actually pretty quick, that actually have some skill, go ahead and showcase them. They're going to have to at least have a 30 to 40 second shift at that 6-minute mark because you're out of players at some point. So I love it. I think it's a great idea. Maybe the NHL is going to look at it because here's the deal. The shootout's fine, but you got some goalies in the league that are unbelievably great goalies, and they'll just flat out admit to you, I suck at shootouts. I suck at it. Remember Robert Leonard, the panda, right? We actually called him, but Leonard, who was the Islanders goalie, the Blackhawks goalie, and then going to Vegas, and now he's been injured forever. When he was with the Hawks, man, he couldn't actually buy a shootout, or I'm sorry, he couldn't actually buy a shootout win. He's like, I'm just not good at the shootout, everything else. So it's maybe a little bit of a mind here, but nevertheless, I think there's a lot of goalies that actually prefer no shootout. Let's go ahead and just go to the 10-minute 3-on-3. I'm fine with that. The shootout tends to be a little bit stressful, and there's some guys that just really just don't like it at all. And I think as fans, I would just prefer the 10-minute OT. Now, if you end up getting 3 OT and you still don't have a goal, okay, go ahead and go to the shootout. But I think the majority of them are actually going to go ahead and get settled there. Patrick Kane just actually scored before the Four Nations, the last game before the break. He scored on a shootout goal. He is now the all-time leader in shootout goals in NHL history, and he overtook his old teammate Jonathan Toews, I think, with 53. So, it hasn't been around that long. That tells me the NHL is probably going to look at this and be like, you know what? Maybe we need to make a little bit of an adjustment.
Yeah, I think it's run its course. It was new and exciting when it first came around. It was exciting. It was kind of got the fans out of their seat a little bit. The old, I know you guys are local, but the old Peoria had a team with the old IHL. They go into shootouts in the minor leagues. They never ended back in the day. So you were talking, Gail, about the Blackhawks when they went to the Cup. But other than that, it was a tough team to watch. But back in the day in the old Norris division, that's now the Central Division, if you were at a tie, that was it. The game was over. Everybody gets a point. Everybody goes home. So those things, just with any sport, with the times change. Things, look at baseball, arguably the most changes, how you're always going to have your old fundamentalists that are die hard with those types of things. But I just think it's run its course. And I do think that the Four Nations is a way to showcase what it could be. As far as the 10 minutes, and you said it, Toast, I'm sorry, you pull your guys, your top line guys. If you're out there 10 minutes and you've got that, it's all about time management. I don't think you could go to a 0-point situation, because then that would be pressure to skate 3 of my best guys. You still give a point for an overtime loss, but you can have that depth. So you are running 4 lines, maybe not 4 lines, but you're at least running 3 lines, 3-on-3. That way you're not stressing out your top 3 guys. You're rolling them, and there's an element of strategy to it. Players seem to like it as well. Most seem to say that, and it's a pretty fast watch. The other thing I've heard about the overtime is kind of like doing it's like dividing the court like a basketball court. Like you can't go once you're past the red line, that's it. You can't, because you'll see that a lot. A team has the puck, they want to change. Guy skates it out of the zone, goes all the way behind his own net, then wheels it back in. They're talking about like cutting that off at the red line. Like you can't go past the red line, otherwise you give up the puck possession. But
and maybe have a defensive face-off in your own zone at that point.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And can't change, treat it like icing.
Yeah. Just those little tweaks, and I'm sure a lot of times too, what they'll do is they'll try out these little rule changes in the major junior leagues, both in the U.S. and Canada. So, but again, you look at the real deal player buy-in, and it seemed to go well in Four Nations. So, I would love it. I would love to see a change. Shootout was fun for a while, and that's the other thing too. If they cut it off now, and Patty Kane's in the record book and nobody can touch it, and I'm fine with that. I love the guy. He was great in Chicago, 3 cups. Let's give him a record that nobody can ever break.
Well, and Gail, I'm going to ask you as we kind of wrap up Sweden here. I think I also texted you and said, hey, this Joel Eriksson X line and Lucas Raymond and Jesper Bratt, that was line number 3 for them. And I really actually thought that was their best line prior to the tournament, and it ended up being where it was their best line. I think it was their best line by far. The Nylander line, who was number one line, was Zibanejad. It was okay. As was Zibanejad actually center in that line, but not like this line. Eck, he was a +4 in a tournament, which was awesome. So I didn't know. I mean, again, from what you actually saw, and I know you probably saw, Jesper Bratt's an unbelievably fast player. Eriksson Ek's actually great in a face-off dot, and Lucas Raymond is a rising star in this league. But did you also see that was actually their best line that you actually thought?
Well, the one thing that I noticed just from having coached a lot of athletes in the past in different sports is Bratt and Raymond seem to be the most agile hockey players on the whole team.
Yeah.
Not only are they fast, but Jesper Bratt can skate circles around people and literally skate a circle around somebody. They're quick. They're smaller guys, and they seem to be able to scoot. So you got guys that are fast, but it might take them a moment or two to get up to speed. These guys they're going. They're really super quick, like cats out there. And by the way, not to get off the subject, we're on Sweden, but Aaron, you mentioned the old Peoria Riverman.
Yeah.
I never mentioned that in the intro when Bryan was asking me my background in hockey. Many a game sitting in the upper bowl, watching the Rivermen when they were in the midst of an all-time winning streak in hockey.
Yeah.
At Jablonski in goal, who went on to be for the Blues, and watching Tony Twist whip people's ass there in the Peoria Civic Center. I probably saw 8 to 10 games there in the early 90s, just driving from Muhammad. So making a 90-mile drive up there, that's also a part of my hockey background and knowing a little bit about how the sport works. Bryan, you're right. Bratt, Raymond, those guys are electric to watch. Of course, I kept betting on Raymond to do something, and he did not have a big tournament as far as the statistics go. But you can see a guy like him, and he's got everything that you would need athletically. He just needs time. And I think with him in Detroit, that's an offensive-minded team from what I can tell. I'd look for him to have a big second part of the season here with the Wings as they go forward.
Yeah, well said, Gail, and absolutely. Raymond he's a rising star, man. There is no doubt about it. He's a 23-year-old. He can be one of the top 20 to 25 players in this league moving forward. Aaron, I want to ask you real quick, and hey, we're having fun with this. We're going to go ahead and continue to talk about this a little bit. I have no agenda on how long we're actually going to go tonight, but nevertheless, we're going to go ahead and continue to talk about Four Nations. But Elias Pettersson, man, what a joke. Aaron, I mentioned that because I know that you're not a big fan, especially, man, the way he's actually looked in playoff outings in the past and stuff. And if you go look at his again, did you notice him when you were actually watching the Four Nations? No, nothing in 3 games, 2 shots on goal, only averaged 30 minutes time on ice a game, and they benched him. How the hell do you actually get benched in a Four Nations? That's almost impossible to actually do. You're telling me you're actually going to get benched when you actually come out and you want to play for your nation and represent your flag, and they're going to go ahead and bench you? Aaron, I got to be thinking, man, the Vancouver Canucks GM, Patrick Alvin, they gave him an 11.6 AAV deal, and he's in the first year of an 8-year contract. He's only 26 years old, but, man, I mean, there's no doubt he's talented, but are they having some buyer's remorse there? I mean, I know you're not a huge fan, but, man, that was hard to watch.
It was, and then and even if so let's say he's not into it, whatever. Okay, we see this in the NHL too. If he wants to take a game off, he's gonna take a game off. There's nobody that can motivate him. The JT Miller, dispute. That's pure speculation. We don't know what happened.
We know what
hearing
happened.
Different things. but he doesn't even, like, he's got his chance to just two-hand him, like, just do something, show some kind of life, like the Canada Sweden game, and nothing. No, it's just like, oh man, or not. I'm sorry, the US Sweden game. So nobody can get through to this guy. It seems like he's just on an island. I don't know. I don't know what to think. like you said, he's capable, he's young, he's got all the talent in the world, but it just seems like he's going to show up when he wants to show up. And if you can figure out that algorithm of what motivates him, or you can get motivated, okay, then fine. But I don't know. If money doesn't do it, so 11.6 doesn't do it. I think Tuckett won the Jack Adams last year. You got Jack Adams award-winning coach, a guy that's walked the walk, talked the talk. He's played the game. You've got a city that is hockey obsessed. That can come with some challenges. I mean, if you're always in the spotlight. What else could you want? What else? What are we missing?
Well,
what is it that gets you going? I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a good look when actually JT Miller's the one actually being traded. A guy who actually had to go ahead and he had obviously a falling out with the franchise to the point where they actually had to put him on leave, so to speak, and actually send him home. And mainly because, again, him and Elias Pettersson actually had a falling out from what actually appears. And Pettersson's not going to be going anywhere because Pettersson's a guy with an 8-year contract, 26 years old, $11.6 million. And JT Miller's a guy who's actually aging, but still actually putting up great stats. And Miller gets to actually go back to the Rangers, where he actually is fitting in great. And the Rangers were actually, after a ridiculous start at 12-4, I think, then lost like 13 in a row or something stupid. They're back on track, man. I would not actually want to play the Rangers in the playoffs because I think they will end up making the playoffs at some point here. And JT Miller actually being there, and Miller's actually had a good tournament for the Americans. So
yeah,
let's talk about Canada, and really Canada along with the U.S. We knew they were going to be the top dogs in this tournament. Man, their offense and their defensive lines are absolutely insane. I mean, you look up and down that lineup, I'm like, man. Not many holes, so much speed. And even you got defensemen who actually played that offensive game, right? And in this format, I mean, we're going to see come U.S. Versus Canada on Thursday night. Is that format actually going to bode well for them? I mean, there's been some reports right now. They actually wish they had a Tom Wilson, right? You could actually go ahead and knock some guys in the mouth because the U.S. are actually taking it to them. So I don't really see any holes in Canada's game, except for their goaltending. And we knew this from the very beginning, even before the tournament started. Jordan Bennington, he's actually won a cup with the Blues, the hell with the Blues. You know that, right, Aaron? And Jordan Bennington, though, I think that overall, if that's the best Canada has to offer for a goaltender with a team this great around him, that's their one weakness. And I think that he is going to be the number one factor against the United States on Thursday. It's going to be him. I mean, you can actually say, hey, they got McDavid, they got McKinnon, they got Crosby, and they got McCarr. And it goes on and on and on about how the great players they have. But you saw what actually happened versus the United States and Canada, where the United States has the ability to actually slow them down, play in between the blue lines. And it's going to come down to actually goaltending and dirty goals in front of the net. And Bennington, I don't trust him. I actually don't trust him. With the Blues, I don't trust them in this four-nation lineup as well. So these top lines here, they've been as good as advertised, led by McDavid, McKinnon, Crosby. I've been real disappointed with Reinhardt's play. His stats may not show it. I think he's got like maybe 4 assists, 4 points in 5 games. Watch him. He's not the same player, man. He looks unbelievably slow out there. At times he looks uninterested. He looks like the point where he's like, I'm not sure what to do. And I've been shocked by the way Reinhardt's looked, because if you look at him actually playing on a nightly basis with Florida, man, he doesn't look like this. And he's playing with even better players. So I'm a little bit shocked by that. But before I go into some hot, cold players on Canada, anything you guys want to say which jumped off of the page for you when it comes to Canada's play so far?
I'm always thinking about sorry, Aaron. I was just saying I'm always thinking about other sports analogies. And Bryan, you saying that Bennington's a weak link there. It's like a baseball team with a great lineup, but they don't have an ace. They do not have a shutdown pitcher at the top of their staff, or maybe they don't have a back-end closer. You wouldn't expect that. You expect that they would have one of the greatest goaltenders in the world between the pipes. And that's how it equates to me in a baseball sense, is that you just don't have a top end pitcher, but you're loaded in your lineup. You can put up 5-6 runs a game,
Yeah.
but you don't know if your guy is going to shut anybody down either.
That's a great analogy. I love that. I think that's well said. That pretty much sums it up. Aaron, what do you think?
Same. I mean, if so, we have a baseball analogy. Now we're going to have a Game 7 analogy. NHL historically, all Game 7s across the board. I don't care what year it is, and I don't have any of these stats. This is from the old noodle, but all Game 7s always go under on the score. Nobody scores. Defense first. Your number one defender is your goaltender. So again, and Bennington, he showed his ass before where he gets a little hot-headed. He goes after his defense. Now he's got his boy Parenko out there, who I think's had a great tournament. He's a big body. He's defensively played, but I think where, again, and I know this isn't a breakdown of Game 1, but we could, U.S. put on a clinic on how defensively to shut down the top forwards in the entire world. Obviously, it was against Canada. Canada saw it. The name escapes me. I'm having a brain fart here with the coach, Tampa Bay coach, John Cooper. Smart, brilliant guy. Saw it all. So the blueprint's there defensively, how to shut down, and I think Canada can do that. Their defense is certainly a strong point, but I would agree with both of you. What jumps off at the page at me is Hellebuck versus at best a 1B goalie in Bennington.
Yeah. One player for Canada that's really jumped off and the page at me, and you look at his stats. He's only got 8 shots over 3 games. He's actually a -3 rating. You're like, toast, okay, why are you bringing this guy up? But Brandon Hagel has actually made a difference for me actually watching this tournament. He's noticeable. He's always around a puck. He's always actually making a play. And we actually knew that when we actually had him with the Hawks. And we knew we had to trade him. All right. The Hawks actually, we knew we actually had to trade him. We had a haul for him. Ended up turning in some really, really good draft picks. We're rebuilding. But to me, Brandon Hagel, what he's actually done with Tampa Bay this year, I think he has the ability to actually turn into a top 30 player. You know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of an Andrew Shaw for the Blackhawks, but on steroids. Way better than Shaw, right? From an offensive production perspective. But I thought Hagel's had a really, really good tournament from offensive defensive end. Again, the stats won't show that. He's not getting any power play time. He's with Sorelli. He's going to be with Sorelli and Marner on line 3. I'm telling you what, guys. Hagel may be a guy that's probably going to be like plus 600 to score a goal, which in the first game versus the United States, he was maybe a plus 300, 325, 350, whatever. I like Hagel to actually score a goal here. If you're going to go ahead and just put together a prop that's like a lotto ticket, right? And I think if he ends up getting a goal early, let's say in the first period or maybe even in the first half of the game, you could see him be bumped at the line too, especially if Reinhart doesn't pick it up, man. Because I'm telling you, I look at Reinhart, I just don't like what I see. He just doesn't look like – I'm not saying Reinhart looks uninterested. He just looks like he has no idea what he's supposed to be doing. That's all. And slow. Maybe that's because he's actually he's been playing with McDavid, right? So he looks slow, but I'm like, he can't keep up with McDavid. Hagel has got a little bit of, get up with his step. I really, really like Hagel to actually move up in the lineup. I hope he does. Let's move on to the U.S. To me, I think the United States is the most complete team in the tournament. I may have not actually said that before the tournament started, but actually after watching the United States actually beat Canada 3-1 in that matchup, you knew the United States had the best goaltender in the world right now, or the best goaltender in this tournament, let's say. All right. And I think he is the best goaltender in the world. All right. With Connor Hellebuck. They got the toughness. They got the size. They got speed. They got playmaking ability. So you got to give the slight edge to the Americans on the Canadians. They have a complete team, man. Line 1 through 4. Hell, Aaron, I was even looking at here. You even look at a guy like Kyle Connor. Kyle Connor's barely getting any ice time at all. He's on a fourth line, man. Kyle Connor is a stud for the Winnipeg Jets and hardly actually getting any playing time at all. Because guess what the United States has actually said? We have defensemen who can actually skate. We have defensemen who actually play the offensive and defensive game. And we also actually have forwards on this team that can not only put the puck in the back of the net, but they can also knock the crap out of you. And just to have that ability to be able to skate and to be able to hit, I mean, I love the team that the U.S. has actually put together, man. And think about this. Austin Matthews, he hasn't even got going yet, man. He sat out of game 3 because it didn't matter, right? It made no difference. So let's go ahead and sit Matthews. But he's been real quiet, man. He's done much of nothing here. You got to think that it's not a necessity that Austin Matthews has to be a major factor in this game, in this championship game. But if he comes out and he's even remotely close to Austin Matthews, we actually know the Americans actually have a huge advantage in this game, in my opinion, because he hasn't done anything at all yet. And the Americans have actually been able to kind of go through this tournament unscathed, even though they lost a previous game, but they are sitting a lot of guys. A lot of guys didn't play a lot of minutes, and the game didn't really mean anything here. So what do you guys think about the U.S. As a whole? Before we get into the matchup, what do you think about the U.S., how they've looked so far in this tournament?
Yeah, well, you touched on, there's 2 players I want to mention that maybe haven't grabbed the headlines. Obviously, the Chucky brothers grabbed all the headlines. They're everywhere.
Oh, I love them.
Good for them. It's the character the NHL needs. It's the I can't get enough. Then the whole lineage with, Dad, Keith, aka Walt Tkachuk playing, so it's a great story there. But you talked about Kyle Connor, not on a stat sheet yet, but that game versus Canada, he had the puck on a string several times. He matched the high-end speed of McDavid, of McKinnon, pound for pound. He was out there flying around. He's a little thin guy, but he can fly. And the other guy was Jack Hughes. Again, not showing up on a score sheet. I don't know what his shots are. I don't have any fancy stats to back this up other than the old eye test. But he was out there just making plays, flying around. He was coming up on the wing. He matched very well with Eichel when they had the time together. So again, and I said 2, I'll name 3, but Jack Eichel, where Austin Matthews has kind of had a slower start, Eichel's picked it up and then some. That may be your line 1 center. Maybe get Eichel out there. I don't know if if we've got Austin Matthews like in 3rd or 4th gear, if he does make it to 5th gear, look out. We might put one on him. But yeah, again, from top to bottom, a complete team. Sucks about McAvoy. I know we'll talk about injuries, but we'll see. Somebody's got to step up. I think they've got the depth to Sanderson. He's no slouch. He'll be just fine. So yeah, let's go. I think we're ready.
Gail, who's stood out to you for the United States? If you, again, the eye test is watching as a hockey fan, but a newer hockey fan coming back to the game.
Well, a newer hockey fan is going to look at the Tkachuk brothers. I saw something hilarious yesterday. They said the Gulf of Mexico becomes the Gulf of America. Make it the Gulf of Tkachuk now. They should just put it on Google Maps and Apple Maps as the Gulf of Tkachuk.
Yeah,
I think that people are going to remember that. You guys were mentioning that in front of Bennington, there could be a problem. There could be some dirty goals. Man, Brady Tkachuk in front of that net, just wearing people out, trying to redirect shots, muscling people around. That's what I'm expecting to see. I'm expecting to see him parking in there and just trying to create mayhem as the game goes on. And maybe he'll get a dirty goal, like you were saying, Aaron. Jake Gensel, of course, I bet Gensel to have a couple shots on goal in that last game, and he did literally nothing.
He did nothing. Yeah.
He did nothing. He had a late shot on goal, but other than that, he did absolutely nothing. I think it's my curse. I think that somebody told him I bet him, and then he's like, okay, I'm not doing anything. But maybe he'll come back and he'll have a game here. He'll do something because he had a really good first couple games in the tournament. He played well against Canada the last time that they played in the 3-1 win. Once again, just to think about this from a pure sports perspective, and this is coming from an old baseball coach. They've got guys that can skate. We've got guys that can skate. They've got guys that can shoot. We've got guys that can shoot. They've got some defensemen that are tough on that blue line. We've got defensemen that are tough on that blue line. It'll come down to somebody that's unsung, perhaps, somebody that you're not expecting. It's like in high school baseball. They had some guys that could hit and pitch. So did we. It would be my number 8 hitter that would out of nowhere hit a home run deep in a game. And you're like, that wasn't expected. Maybe it's somebody you don't expect that will rise up. Maybe it'll be a Matt Boldy who doesn't get a lot of ice time in those first couple of games, but you could tell he was playing pretty well in that last game. Werenski's been shooting the puck over and over and over and over. A bunch of assists for him. Maybe he gets one to the back of the net in this game, but it could be the superstars that take it over. It could be McDavid, McKinnon, and the guys you expect there, or maybe one of the Kachucks or an Eichel. But do not put it past somebody completely unsung that you're not expecting to do something huge that turns the game or wins the game. That's what I'd be looking for, because I think, Aaron, you said it's going to be tightly contested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Find somebody that's unsung.
Definitely. And you got to look at those third and fourth liners. And tell you what, for the United States, Dylan Larkin, again, I've been in guys actually played extremely well. Man, this is going to, I can't wait for Thursday. And this kind of takes us to, let's go ahead and talk about some predictions. All right. For this game. And I'm like, hey, I said we'll maybe spend a half hour, 40 minutes on this. The hell with it. We're talking about the 4 nations. All right. So if we get the rest of the show, great. If we don't, I don't care. It makes no difference at all. I have a prediction in mind here. I'm going to go ahead and start it off here. I'm going to go ahead and say, I do think USA actually has the slight advantage here. I've watched all the Rocky movies a million times. All right. So let's just go ahead. Rocky was actually able to go into Russia and take on Drago and actually take on the Russian premier and, watch the anthem and actually watch about Drago sweating and everything else and keep looking back at him and went in there and took care of business. And here's the deal. The USSR anthem, I kind of like that anthem. All right. I mean, it's awesome, isn't it? Like the beat of it is great. Yeah. I mean, and you got Drago looking back and you got, it's like freaking, you might as well have pulled tanks in there. But I mentioned that is like, I'm not saying that's the type of feel you're going to have here because you're not. I mean, they're a border nation right here, Canada, US, but hockey, Canada is hockey. All right. And the United States is a team actually coming in that, in the eyes of the world, have no business beating the Canadians, right? But they do. And I think they're actually the better team. I actually see a United States win here, 4-2. It's going to be extremely close, 3-2. You'll have an empty net goal late. And if there was ever a game I was going to go ahead and bet the draw on for this game to actually go to overtime, this would be the game. This would be the game. I imagine a draw on this is going to be plus 300, plus 310, somewhere around there. I mean, it's got all of the markers to actually do that. Last time United States actually, played them a couple of days ago, they won 3-1. That was in Montreal. That was a hell of the Russian crowd, right? That type of atmosphere. I'm not saying they're Russian. I'm just saying that was a type of atmosphere, man. It was in a hostile environment. Now you're actually in Boston. And you're going to have the United States backing this team. And it's going to be all out there for them. And if I'm United States, you can't put the foot off the pedal. You have to actually continue to hit this team and hit them hard and hit them in the mouth. You can't let up. You have to actually, wrestle in the wars that actually got you here. So that's what needs to happen. Don't change your game. Don't overthink it. And again, allow those third and fourth liners to go ahead and bring you home. But I'm seeing a 4-2 win by the Americans.
Yeah. I was going to say that Rocky ended the Gold Bowl. Yes, he did.
Maybe he did.
He did. It was the final brick in the wall. No pun intended with the Rocky win there. But anyway, I would say I'm definitely going under on this just because of the whole Game 7 mentality. Right now the line's sitting at 5.5. I mean, you probably tease it up. You're not going to get as good of odds, but the money line's dead even. And then the Canadians getting a goal and a half right now is at -285. The U.S. giving up a goal and a half, or the favorites at +230, giving the Canadians. So I'm not messing with any of that. It's going to be a close game. The other thing I was going to say, and you just said it, is the tie. I'm going to have to give that some serious thought, because then you've got then it goes to this overtime format. It's definitely going the under maybe. And then I like what you said, Gail, about the unsung hero, the third or fourth liner will maybe a Matt Boldy anytime game score, something like that. I mean, those lines haven't come out yet, at least on DraftKings. They don't have the player props yet, but once those come up, I think I'm going to look hard at that under, and then couple it with maybe either a point total or a anytime goal score with that, because those top two lines on both teams, they seem to cancel each other out, at least what we've seen so far. So now, we're looking at that Dylan Larkin, that you had talked about, what's his name, the winger for Canada.
Hagel.
Yeah, Hagel, his line, Braden Point, those type of guys that not McDavid, not McKinnon, but those guys that are right there on the cusp. That would be interesting to see them. So if you're going to go the opposite way and maybe look at Canada having the edge, maybe one of those third forward line guys as your anytime goal scorer. But we'll have to see what those odds are when they do come out.
They're out.
Oh, the player props are already?
Oh yeah. Let's talk about them.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm not getting them, but go ahead.
Gail, before we do that, and sorry, Aaron, I mean to cut you off.
No.
Gail, any predictions for this U.S. Canada game on Thursday night?
I may not make a prediction at all. I'm afraid I'll say something as a prediction, and then the U.S. will get beat. You know how it is. Bryan, I think you and I share a sports brain. About 99.5% of our sports mentality is identical. The fact that you're bringing up the Rocky movies, it's hilarious, because I've seen people on X making montages where they put in all this Americana, a bald eagle beating the hell out of a goose. I've seen that on X. And then people putting in the Eye of the Tiger music. The game's going to give people the feels. There's going to be some goosebumps, I think, from the national anthem on. And you know what? Maybe I'm not so out of place on this hockey show, because you guys have mentioned some people. Bryan, you told me to write down a name or two of some people I thought maybe we should watch in the game. And I kid you guys not, on this sheet, at the very bottom of the sheet, I wrote a couple names down. At the very bottom of the sheet, it said unsung heroes for both teams. And for the U.S., I put Boldy and Werenski, who I brought up.
I love that.
And then I have two names for Canada, who I haven't said at all yet, but they're on this sheet in ink. Brandon Hagel and Braden Point. Bryan, you mentioned Brandon Hagel, and Aaron, you mentioned Braden Point, and I literally have their names written at the bottom of the sheet as people to mention at the end here. Maybe, as we all want America to win, we want the U.S. to win this game. So, I mean, we've got some guys written down and thought up in our minds, but as a counterbalance, if you see somebody emerge that maybe is not one of the names that a casual fan recognizes, I have Hagel and Point written on the sheet right there. So maybe they'd be guys to take a look at. I don't think you can match. I don't know if you're going to be able to match the intensity in the first 9 seconds that you did in that first game.
Right.
I don't think you're going to see that.
Let's No, I'm glad you brought that up. How do we not talk about that? Let's talk about that. So you, again, what did you think about that? What did you understand why that happened? Did you understand the importance of that? And what did you think about that when that actually happened? 3 fights in 9 seconds.
Well, I know a lot of people were thinking that the Canadians booed our anthem, so our guys got pissed and won the fight. I don't think that's what it was at all. Saturday night, 8 p.m., the world's watching, Canada, US. It's all-star weekend in some people's minds for other sports. And if you turn on the hockey game, you saw people prove that it mattered right from the very, very beginning. And I know there's some history between so-and-so or whatever else also. But I think they wanted to just show there was going to be an intensity to this. You guys keep saying that the U.S. has maybe the bulkier, more brawling, more bruising style, and Canada is more, from my perspective, maybe the more speedy, finesse, agile team. They didn't back down. It wasn't like our U.S. guys just whipped their asses. Those were some long fights for hockey, especially the 2 fights that Kachucks got in there with at the beginning. But Canada did not back down. They may have not won those fights in the view of a hockey nation, but it isn't like they got their ass whipped. So they had to match that intensity right off the bat. Casual fan, I was trying to explain to people who are casual fans that don't watch a lot of hockey that fighting is not ingrained in the game like it was when we were growing up, when you had the Bob Proberts and the Tony Twist. There aren't people on rosters now that are simply there to go kick some ass. That doesn't exist anymore. It happens, but it's way more spotty than it used to be. Guys I hang out with are like, oh yeah, they're fighting. It's hockey. I was like, that's not what it's about anymore. It's more of a finesse speed game. But I can't imagine we're going to see that. I think they did that to grab some attention. I think that was, from my perspective, this is going to grab the world's attention. People that are casual sports fan like Gail or whoever else, they're going to be talking about it. They're going to go back to work Monday and Tuesday and be like, did you see that crap on Saturday night? Did you see what happened? It didn't end with the fights, man. Some of the checking was unbelievable. Yeah. I saved some of the check highlights on my X account because I want to go back and watch them over and over and over. And people getting launched. I don't know if I'm expecting quite the same level. It'll be a different sort of intensity, but I'm not expecting anything like that again.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder if the game's going to play like a playoff game where you want to play a tight, good game. You want to stay out of the box. You do not want to give Canada their power play. All right. It's no different than actually not want to give Edmonton their power play, right? Stay out of the box. But at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they actually dropped the gloves again and just got it on at this point. That may be good for the United States. That may be good for them to actually come out and say, you know what, like, we're not going to play any different. We're not going to actually really play tight. It may loosen everybody up. So I'm interested to see what specifically is going to happen in that game. I have really no idea. But I want to go through some of these props here for anytime goal scorer, because in this game here, the previous game, all of the props were much lower when the odds were much lower. The odds makers were expecting a low scoring game between the United States and Canada. This time here, you do have a little bit of higher props on goal scoring, but we talked about guys like Brandon Hagel, plus 600. All right, plus 600. Gail, a guy like Sam Bennett, we know he shoots the puck, and he does for Florida. And he may not actually be like getting the top 6 minutes and whatnot, but nevertheless, plus 950 for a guy that shoots a puck like him. I mean, that's a play, right? Sprinkle some money on that. Zach Werenski, again, a guy who's really been in the NHL, he actually shoots a ton. In this tournament, he shot a ton. A plus 750 to score a goal as well. So Mitch Marner's a plus 425. JT Miller's a plus 600. It's like eye candy looking here. I mean, you see a guy like Kyle Connor at a plus 425, which is in the middle of the pack. You'd want to stay away from him, right? Because we understand that he's only getting about 11 minutes of time on ice a game. But you got a lot of Canadians and a lot of United States guys that are down the list who are getting a lot of minutes on ice. And the odds are like stupid good. McCarr is a plus 650. So.
Well, it's going to be hilarious when you put 3 of those guys together in a lotto ticket format to put $5 on it.
It'll be plus 20,000.
Yeah, it's going to be insane. And then if they hit, it'd be like, oh, unbelievable. I know you'll put something together like that, Bryan, because you've been doing that in the past, just every week throwing 3 guys out there on big slate nights, and if they hit. But could you imagine if you had 3 guys on the same slip and they hit a goal? Even a point will probably pay huge money. It'd be so fun to watch, no pressure. You're not going to sweat it. Throw Rowinski, Hagel, and somebody else at random on one bet and see what happens.
Yep. Guys, look on X tomorrow at Toast Clark, at FIF Hockey. You'll see Toast Takes. And this will be one where we'll actually get together with Gail, with JT, with Aaron, and we'll actually put one together. We'll actually make a bet together, maybe a 3-legger, and ride with us. Okay. But let's go ahead and we'll stick with some of the Four Nations, but we're going to move on. Gosh, I can't wait for Thursday night. Aaron, there's been a lot of key injuries, illnesses that have occurred during the Four Nations. Some of them have actually occurred right before the long break for a lot of the NHL players. Who should we be concerned about? What players could be like a nice supplementary pickup maybe for guys in our fantasy leagues? Talk about some injuries, some illnesses, if you could.
Yeah, and I guess we'll find out. We don't know exactly what some of the big names that aren't playing. Quinn Hughes. It sounds like he's going to come in. Boston don't know if he'll play or not. Sounds like a couple of the, again, and we don't know what'll happen in this game either. We could see some, guys are going all out. We might see some injuries, but when it comes to fantasy and how do we turn this into cash, that's really what we're all after. I love that we're going to throw together the bets, and I like what we've come up with so far. But when it comes down to your fantasy team, and those are in either the redraft leagues, dynasty leagues, doesn't really matter your format, you're getting into the nitty gritty, if not already starting to get into the playoffs here in the next couple of weeks. But 2 guys want to point out, according to Fantrax, they're both around that 60% available. So most leagues out there, they're available. But Jean-Gabriel Pageau, the Islanders, has turned it on. He's had quite turned into. There's talks of him going to a contender. So he's a deadline guy. If the Islanders are on a heater, they're not too many points out, but assuming that the Islanders they're 4 points out of a wild card spot, but assuming that they are sellers, he could be a guy that goes to a contender that I think he contributes. So, and a guy that's available in most formats. Second guy, Evan Rodriguez. He's that Florida third line guy. Florida, I don't know. I assume Matty Tkachuk's going to play, but Florida sent 9 guys to this.
That's insane.
Yeah. So, who's left? Well, he's there and he's available, like I said, in about 65% of the leagues. So he might be one of those plugs you stick in here towards the end that if you are a little, again, the dust is going to settle, because if you look at most of your formats, like they've had a lot of they've had some days off. So some of these players that maybe were questionable or that may have sat out a couple of games, they don't need to, because the ones that stayed at home. So we may see healthier lineups going into our fantasy playoffs, but I would keep my eye on those 2 guys. Again, with Pageau, he could move at the deadline, go to a contender and contribute day 1. And then again, you got your old standard Evan Rodriguez, who again has been Mr. Consistent there on a cup contender team that has played well as of late, at least going into the break. So those 2 are what I'd say, or what I encourage listeners to look at, because their availability is pretty high. Oh, one more guy, actually, another guy for our home team here for the Hawks, Bertuzzi. Tyler Bertuzzi's out there as well. He started like crap. He started slow. He always starts slow. He did the same thing in Toronto, did the same thing in Boston, but he's picked it up now. And I think is he closing in on 20 goals? 17. Yeah. He may end up with 25. Look at him. Hawks are playing some meaningless games. Everybody's taking it easy on the Hawks. Hawks are going to play some bad teams that aren't making the playoffs here shortly. Throw Bertuzzi in there. He might get you a couple goals.
Yeah, so it's interesting for these injuries. I actually saw that Charlie McAvoy is actually went to the hospital. Right. It was an infection, they actually called it. And now Quinn Hughes is actually on his way, and he's actually being part of Team USA for Four Nations moving forward. But they said that specifically there has to be another illness or injury for him to actually play. I have a feeling that Hughes could find his way into the lineup. And, man, if he could find his way in the lineup in his Four Nations, that's going to be a huge boost for the Americans, man. That is ginormous for a guy is arguably is a top three defenseman in the entire world. And one of behind McCarr, he's a top two offensive defenseman in the world. So it'll be interesting to see what he can actually do as well coming in this tournament. But yeah, good call out there for, injuries. I mean, that kind of leads us in here to, our next segment, which let's go ahead and talk about, let's do that hockey. And we'll talk about some schedules as far as it pertains to NHL fantasy hockey playoffs.
Hey, as they say in hockey, let's do that hockey.
All right. So want to give the listeners a little bit of a heads up regarding week 20. We're in week 19 now. And I know for Aaron, our home league, week 19 is the last regular season week. It's a long week. It goes all the way to March 2nd for most leagues. And then the playoffs start on March 3rd, or they start like in week 23. But for those leagues that are actually starting in week 20 and week 21 for their first round matchups, let's go and talk about some schedules that actually work out pretty good. And for week 20, so that's starting next Monday, and that entire week after, you have Chicago, 4 games, a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. And Aaron mentioned one guy who would be a good pickup, and that's Tyler Bertuzzi. Bertuzzi's probably about, I'm guessing, 60% owned in Fantrax, 60% owned. He was actually playing with Bedard on line 1. They've shuffled that around, and really, he's still worth a pickup. And I still think he's going to make that 25 goals. And who knows? I don't think Bertuzzi's going to get moved at the deadline. They signed him to a 3-year deal, I think worth $5.4, $5.5 million AAV. But don't put it past the Hawks to actually consider moving him. If they're going to get some inquiries. There's no doubt about it. And Landon Slaggert, though. Landon Slaggert's a guy I actually like for the Hawks in week 20 to actually pick up these 4 games. He is playing with Bedard. The 22-year-old actually came up. He's actually had a huge impact. And Aaron, I know you've actually watched quite a bit of Hawks games here. Man, Slaggert can move. He can skate. He's super fast. And Gail, you talked about a guy like Bratt who can actually skate circles around people. Slaggert has the ability to skate circles around people when he actually knows he should skate circles around people. He's young, right? He doesn't know exactly where he's supposed to be on the ice yet. But that's also another good pickup, okay? Also in week 20, LA, 4 games, a Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. So again, that's 3 off nights, 1 heavy night and Saturday there. But Alex Turcotte is a guy on line 1, young guy, kind of getting a little bit of a show up there on line 1. He's worth a look. And then Trevor Moore. I like Moore. I actually had him on my Dynasty team, but Moore's a guy who he's not going to hit. He's not going to block. And he's got to be actually shooting a puck and scoring. But when he does, man, he scores them in bunches. He's on line 2. He's worth a look in week 20 for LA. The New York Islanders also have 4 games for a Monday, Tuesday, Saturday, Sunday. So you get 2 off nights for Monday and Sunday, and then Tuesday, Saturday for those regular nights. You got Anthony Duclair on line 1, and you got Simon Holmstrom on line 3. And Holmstrom's been streaky. But again, it could be worth a pickup, especially if you're actually looking to maximize those starts. And then lastly, in week 20 there, Washington. And Washington, man, they always got great schedules. Washington is one of those teams, they play like a West Coast team as far as their schedule goes. They always have these off nights. And again, in week 20 is no difference for 4 games, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. What a schedule they actually have for Washington there. Nick Dowd on line 4. He's been sneaky good with goals. And Andrew Mangiapane is also on line 4 as well. These guys aren't getting great time on ice, but these are guys that are actually proven. They've actually been able to put the puck in the back of the net. And I like them for pickups in the event you're needing maybe 3-4 points a night for each one of them. So go ahead and get those. One team you want to go ahead and shy away from in week 20 on the schedule is Utah. They only have 2 games. All right. So when they're already thin as it is, and they got guys like Michelli and guys like Bukestad, and they got some guys you want to pick up, but only for 2 games. You got to think, am I going to go ahead and keep some Utah players on my roster, or am I going to go ahead and drop them in favor for Chicago, LA, Islanders, and Washington? Anything to add, Aaron or Gail, before I go ahead into week 21 for the schedule?
No, but good call out on Utah. I did not realize that. There's some guys in our home league, and you can say this about any listener that's in the league. There's going to be some guys that this week will decide if they make it or break it. They got some tough decisions to make. Good call out. Stay away from Utah. Look out. You do not get trapped by by a team that's only playing 2 games.
Yep. And schedule for week 21. So I don't have the schedule in front of me, but basically if we end up so the following week, okay, so I wish I actually had a date here for you guys. But again, we're in week 19 right now. We just recapped week 20, and now it's week 21. Anaheim has 4 games, a Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. Great schedule there. Again, I mean, there's some guys there like Mintyukov or defenseman actually be picked up for Anaheim. Anaheim being a bottom 12 as they actually are. You could actually get an Alex Killorn if you wanted to for probably cheap. I would say go ahead and look at Anaheim. Colorado, slim pickings, right? Because they're a really, really good offensive team, but they got a great schedule. Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday as well for week 21, 4 games. Detroit, man, what a schedule this is. Detroit, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. You know what this reminds me of right now? It's actually going through, Gail, remember back in the day we watched NWA wrestling, and they'd actually go through all the towns. They were actually going to be in all the cities. And
don't miss it. Be there.
Yeah, that's how I feel right now when actually going through these right now. Be there, yes. But Detroit, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, 4 games in week 21 as well. Marco Casper's a great pickup. Even a Jonathan Bergeron is not a bad pickup. In the event you need 4 starts, and again, you're just looking for points there. All right. Edmonton, 4 games, Monday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday in week 21. And again, Utah bounces back with a great schedule to actually match Detroit's on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday as well. The team to stay away from in week 21 is Calgary, only 2 games. So be looking at those. If you are actually entering playoffs, which we are in our home league, we actually go 2 weeks per playoff matchup. And we actually will week 20 and week 21 will actually be together. So managers, especially if you're actually in our home league, be listening to this. You want to stay away from Utah in week 20. You actually want to stay away from Calgary in week 21. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the last segment here. The future is bright.
And you, young Skywalker, we will watch your career with great interest.
So, Aaron, who do you actually have for Futures Bright? Again, these are guys that may play in the OHL, the AHL, the WHL, the NCAAs. They've been drafted. We actually have guys coming up. They're going to be draft eligible this year in the 2025 entry draft. Who do you actually have that you like here for players to target, managers to target, especially in Dynasty?
So I'm going team by team alphabetically. We're on Boston now. Boston, it's a good timing to talk about Boston because they whether they make a playoff push or not. I was just pulling up the standings real quick to see if I think currently they're in. Is that right? Or it might be a point or 2 off.
I think they're in.
Are they in right now? Yeah, you're right. You're right. There they are. So they are. Or Or no. Yeah, they are. They have one of the wild card. No, they're a point out. Red
Are they?
Wings just
Okay.
passed them. Yeah. Point out though, it's splitting hairs, but I don't think you'll see either one of these guys this year. The reason why I start off with that is because I think these are guys. I think Boston will be. We might see some retooling. We might see some. I want to call it like not a tear down rebuild, but again, I just said it, retool, kind of St. Louis Blues style, where they got some NHL ready guys. So the two guys that they got that are NHL ready, both playing the AHL. You got Fabian Lysell. He is a blue chip prospect, 21st overall in the 2021 draft. So he's drafted. He was highly touted then. He's put up. This will be his closing down his second season in the AHL, but 75 points in 92 games. Doesn't really jump off the page, but it screams out second or third line guy. That's kind of what Boston will need. Again, we might see a completely different Boston roster. That's why I think it's important to kind of tune into their depth and to see where they're at next year. The other guys from your favorite country, from Russia, but a little bit older guy. He's been in the AHL for a while. They've called him up a couple of times, but Georgi Merkulov. He was undrafted. He came from Russia. Right now, he is a point per game production in the AHL. He's just under that. He's 41 points in 45 games. Prior to this, he's been a point per game in the AHL. But one of those guys that's on the cusp, I think he could be a difference maker. Now, should Boston stay where they're at, a point out, and maybe they've, I don't know what they're an injury away from having to call one of these two guys up. So I think these are the guys that are next in line, at least from a points per game, and they're playing at a high level at the AHL. They're both doing relatively well. So I just keep my eyes out on them. If you're going into your draft next year and you've got a pick or you're in that dynasty league, again, I think Boston's got a pretty decent all across the board. Their forwards may not be as good, but their defense and their goaltender in their farm system are towards the higher end of the farm system. So a team to keep track of, and I think a team that we may see these prospects sooner rather than later, given the age of their current roster and their if they miss playoffs, I think you're going to see some changes.
Yeah, a real good recap, Aaron. And you're right. It's a really interesting spot that Boston's in. And I like the way you actually said retool or like soft rebuild, right? And they're kind of there. They have a real good balance of some aging players, but also actually some young talent coming in, like a lot of teams do. It'd be interesting to actually see what they do at this deadline as well, given the fact that they actually fired their coach, Jim Montgomery. He ended up going over to the St. Louis. He ends up, he gets replaced. That Boston kind of bounces back a little bit. They're in that wild card spot. They got to be realistic with themselves on where are they at right now. Yeah. What are they going to do at the deadline? This deadline is going to be insane. I think the deadline's on March 7th, I believe, for the NHL. And most trade deadlines for fantasy has actually already come. So let's be on the lookout. Next week, we're probably going to go ahead and talk about a little bit about that as we start to go into the playoffs from an AHL perspective as well as a fantasy perspective as well. Gail, I'm going to ask you, do you have a favorite player as we close out the show here? Do you have a favorite Blackhawk from those early 90 teams? Somebody that kind of stood out to you that whether for a good, bad, or indifferent, whatnot from them, maybe that 92 Cup team. Was there somebody that you really liked from those Blackhawks teams?
I have a Jeremy Roenick jersey in my closet still. I think that jersey was made in the United States of America. That's how old it is. I remember those teams were great. Remember Steve Larmer?
Yeah.
Speaking of unsung guys.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy was great. And then, of course, you've got Savard before that. But I was a big Roenick guy back when he was getting started with the Blackhawks. And he's got a pretty cool X account. He posted some hilarious stuff during COVID out in his backyard, making obstacle courses for his kids on a side note. But I have a jersey. My son, high school student, on dress-up days of his jersey days, he's walked the hallways with that Jeremy Roenick jersey on at my high school where I teach.
That doesn't surprise me. That is awesome. Yeah, I think about guys like Dirk Graham, the captain, Michelle Goulet.
There it is, Aaron. Check that out.
So yes, awesome, Aaron. Yeah, Aaron's now in actually collecting hockey cards and actually sending them in to get graded and stuff. And Gail, I know you were actually into baseball cards and stuff for a while there as well, and have become a collector. You guys may have something to talk about. Hey, that's going to do it for tonight's show. We went a long time tonight, but man, we really didn't know what to expect with a different format. We've had a ton of fun. As mentioned before, this is the Around the Ice podcast, a Fantasy Frames podcast. To follow our hockey content produced by our hockey staff here at Fantasy and Frames, please follow us on the X at FIF Hockey, where you can find the show streaming every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Central Time. A show where you can ask us, again, NHL questions, NHL betting questions, and fantasy hockey questions as well. You can find me, Bryan Toast Clark, at Toast Clark on X. Aaron Tometich, you can find him at Titch4141. And again, Gail, we're going to have you back, as you did a great job. This will be good for me to kind of bust your balls from time to time. But at Gail Clark 40 on the X. So thank you very much for all those who have tuned in tonight's show and you interacted on the YouTube chat. Until next time, may all your bets hit, and the best of luck to all fantasy managers going forward in the playoff matchups.